Hello, welcome to Scary Thoughts, Horror, Philosophy, Culture. I'm Mark Cate.
And I'm Chad Lott.
This is episode 32. We are going to be talking about Scooby Doo. Not the original show, not any of its further incarnations, not any of the movies, live action or animated, but all of the above. We're just going to be discussing the phenomenon of Scooby Doo and his Scooby Gang.
Yep.
Just to prepare you, our next episode, we are going to be talking about Ouija, Origin of Evil, 2016. We just decided that and are already both regretting it.
Yeah, it seems like a terrible movie.
It is a terrible movie.
Full of terrible things.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it can't be any worse than that new Hellraiser movie that just came out on Netflix or wherever. Maybe it's not a Netflix movie, but it just came out.
Hellraiser? Really?
There's a new one past the one that everybody said, hang it up.
Yeah.
They've gone one further.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, once you own the suit, why not?
Got anything to plug?
Not really. If you want to, go head on over to our iTunes page and give us a review or a star ranking of some sort. 5 is the preference, though. If you want to express yourself differently, you can always put like a 1 or a 2 or something like that. We don't recommend that. It seems like a cry for help to me.
And while you're online looking at Scary Thoughts related things, go to our website, scarythoughts.org. Check out what we've got there. A little bit of info on each episode. And we have a newsletter that we send out with each episode. And you can sign up on the right-hand side.
Sweet.
All right, so warning about this episode, full spoiler alert. Wait, it's Scooby Doo. I'm sorry.
You know exactly what happens.
I just kind of fell into the spiel I give at the beginning of every episode and didn't even think about the fact that it's totally unnecessary this time.
Yeah. Although Mystery Incorporated has an interesting ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, some of them have different endings. We'll get into that later. Where do you want to start with this one?
Well,
there's so much material to talk about, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say. I mean, the first thing to say is I'll just go ahead and state my opinion. I am a known non-fan of cartoons. I'm not that into them, and This was no exception. I started by watching some of the original episodes, which I think are just borderline unwatchable. I know there's some differing opinion with our fans, or listeners rather.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, so you can make a case for the music being rad.
The music is weird as hell and super fascinating, and I wish it was genuinely available outside of those cartoons.
Yeah, you can't really find it. And then the plots, I mean, I guess the plots are what you expect, but I mean, they're hard to watch for me, you know. But then again, they're basically Law and Order episodes. Yep. There's a thing that happens. There's a suspect that is probably the suspect that you think, and then it ends up not being that person, except for every once in a while it is, so it's like a double fake. And then at the very end, there is no actual supernatural thing. It's just been somebody who has been stopped by the meddling kids.
That is almost always true until some of the later movies.
Yeah. I will say that Mystery Incorporated is a delight, and it came out on 2010 Cartoon Network, and they gave it the full Cartoon Network treatment. Yeah,
Scooby Doo, since its inception with Scooby Doo, Where Are You? In 1969, saw a lot of reboots and re-envisionings, whether it was shorts or feature-length movies, whatever. So many different versions, including like the introduction of Scrappy Doo, and like it went through a lot of phases. But Mystery Incorporated is, I think, when it really peaked. Like, I think those are genuinely better than the originals. It's hard to, I can't criticize the original because it was so iconic, but Mystery Incorporated's genuinely interesting. I do have a serious critique of it, though, and that's because of my feminism. And
I knew you would bring that dreary topic up.
Well, it's fucking real, man. Like, the thing about the Scooby Gang, in, like, let's say Scooby Doo, Where Are You? They're just a group of kids, and they're pretty much equals. Mm-hmm. And in Mystery Incorporated, Daphne's only function is to be in love with Fred. And Thelma's only function is to be in love with Shaggy. And Fred doesn't give a shit about Daphne, and Shaggy doesn't give a shit about Thelma. And so the women, after decades of being part of this gang, have been totally devalued to being nothing but yearning love interest, not even love interests, having love interests. And I think that's a serious fucking problem.
Yeah, I don't agree at all. I think it's a cartoon, right? So everything's pretty one note. So Fred is totally obsessed with making traps,
Yep.
probably autistic.
Yep.
Daphne is, in a way, she's rebelling against her parents, who are these super, super rich people, and she's chosen Fred as this kind of, he's basically a nerd in the show, you know, so she's fallen in love with this person who's not approved of by her parents at all. They want her to be with, like, the guy who's the ladder heir.
Oh yeah.
He's like owns the 7th most popular ladder franchise in the area.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of that going on, which is a little more interesting than just her pining after him. And then,
Well, okay, if I may, that's backstory. Her actions in the series don't contribute anything to them uncovering mysteries. At least in the episodes I saw, all I saw her do was chase Fred around and wish he would notice her, which he doesn't.
no, as the episode unfolds a little bit, I think it gets a little aware of that, because she goes from being a thing that gets saved to she sings for the Hex Girls at one point. She plays the lead singer. She gets her goth on.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, it pretty much becomes, he realizes that he has feelings for her too, and then the relationship becomes a little bit more balanced as the episodes go on. And then, you know, I guess probably a lot of feminist critique would be irritated that Thelma is no longer a lesbian as per the canon of that show, but I mean, who knows? Like, that was
I want to
never
get into
explored.
that later.
Yeah. But I mean, that relationship is really more about, to me, the failing of Shaggy as an indecisive man.
That's
Child,
fair.
you know, and like, you know, I think that Daphne and Thelma have these interests, and these two people who are the closest to them is almost like just a standard high school thing, you know. There's the weird bestiality dog element with Shaggy, but, you know,
That's a problem.
yeah.
The thing I really wanted to do Scooby Doo for is that its function as a cartoon for kids, and maybe it as an icon, is that it is basically these kids who go around and uncover people who are leveraging superstition for personal gain. Right. So they're kind of really good icons for skepticism and the new skeptic movement, honestly, of which I wouldn't call myself a member, but I can't not be enticed by a good argument,
Right.
a good rational argument. And that's what they do. You know, they're anti-conspiracy, they're suspicious, they're rational. And I think that another thing that is kind of fun is if you go into the mythology of it. You know, you were saying like Thelma is a lesbian or something. Like the Scooby Doo universe is really perfect for fan theories and has been for a long time. Now everything has fan theories. Now every piece of pop culture has like this infinity of people decoding and coming up with fan theories. But Scooby Doo has had that for a really long time, and it's often like Daphne and Fred are always splitting up so that they can go have sex without anybody knowing, that Shaggy and Scooby are stoners, and that Scooby snacks are actually like pop brownies or the equivalent, something like that. But what's funny is these are like sort of conspiracies, and this show is all about uncovering conspiracies. And so it just kind of wraps itself up in this little world about conspiracy and blowing things up, right?
Yeah. The other thing I think is interesting about it is there's like a Hardy Boys quality to it.
Totally.
Too. You know, like, so the idea that young people will uncover mysteries, you know, I just, it seems
And
like
Nancy Drew.
Yeah, and Nancy Drew, or I mean, even to a certain extent, To Kill a Mockingbird. There's kind of a mystery in the middle of that. It has the same thing. They're basically uncovering a crazy mystery, except for at the end of it, it's a terribly boring monster. I mean, you see it now, Stranger Things. You know, a gang of kids trying to solve some sort of supernatural thing. Except for in Scooby Doo, like the adults are almost always totally inept.
Yes.
I mean, they're insanely inept in Mystery Incorporated. And one of the fun plot lines is that the town that they live in, Crystal Cove, is a tourist town, and it's a tourist destination because there are so many supernatural things that happen there, but the kids keep debunking them, which keeps hurting the bottom line of the town's tourist industry. So there's a little bit of the adults don't want them to be conspiracy debunkers.
Yeah, it's great. But I think it's worth keeping in mind that this show started in 1969, which was, still in the crest of the eruption of youth culture and kids fighting against the man and questioning their parents and creating their own worlds outside of, that's what this is, right? This is about being suspicious, teaching kids to be suspicious of what their parents tell them. And I think that, and this is extending what I was saying about new skepticism, is like teaching kids to be skeptical of superstition. Because you can look at Scooby Doo and say like, oh, it's Old Man Jenkins pretending he's a witch. But it's a very short step from that to organized religion, as far as I'm concerned. Teaching kids to be skeptical of how superstition can be used to manipulate other people and to not be fooled by that.
Yeah. One thing I like about the show, which is one of the things I like about the character Hermione in Harry Potter, which is another series I don't really like very much, differing from our fans probably.
Ditto.
But I love that for Hermione and Daphne and Thelma, the answer is often in the library. And one of the things I like is that they often do start with the myth that they're debunking, and it's not because they believe in it. They just know that it's probably being utilized in some way. What I like is that they're not dispensing with the myth. The myth is interesting and useful because it adds fear to the situation, which makes the show fun. And then the monsters are almost always goofy as well.
Yeah.
And then there's the cartoon logic where you run off the side of a building and look around and you don't fall until you look down and fall down. So it has all the Hanna-Barbera-isms.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, that was what made this show, I think, so successful at the beginning, is that they were willing to do a scary horror show for children, but the way that they could make it not so damn scary is nothing is actually really happening. First of all, unfortunately, that actually makes the first few seasons unwatchable because there's so much ham-fisted slapstick, that kind of stuff. And it's relentless. The laugh track is more present than the dialogue. And Scooby-Doo in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Is intolerable. I mean, people complain about Scrappy-Doo ruining Scooby-Doo, but Scooby-Doo was already that annoying in the first place.
The show itself is really, it slips its boundaries a lot too. They party with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yes.
There's episodes with Batman.
There's an episode with Kiss.
Yeah, there's a whole movie with Kiss.
Right.
And it is not great. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's basically borrows a lot of elements from Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. It takes place in a park, and Kiss is there to help them solve these mysteries too. But it does sort of mirror a little bit of what's happening with the newer episodes, where Kiss are actually aliens in the movie, and they do sort of fly off into space near the end of it. So even though there are explicitly supernatural elements earlier in the series, it seems that a little bit of the mid-90s on conspiracy theory has become an acceptable live mythology for the series writers as it goes on. Yeah,
that's something that I think is actually a problem for this series, is that I think it's what is it called? Scooby Doo on Zombie Island, I think, is one of the movies, and there are actually zombies, and it's actually lampshaded by Fred disbelieving, because why would he believe there are zombies? But it turns out, no, there are actually zombies in this universe now, and it kind of undoes the foundation of what Scooby Doo is, which is really odd, and introducing aliens, introducing an epic conspiracy like in Mystery Incorporated, I think is super fascinating because, well, we all know epic conspiracies are real, so that's fine. But the aliens and, again, that's kind of takes the fun out of it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. What they do, though, with Mystery Incorporated in particular is it gets so conspiracy that they mobilize sort of multiverse conspiracy, which is where, I just read this book about multiverse theory, and it's insanely complicated, and based on the math, seems to be pretty accepted amongst the really high level thinkers that there are just a whole bunch of different universes happening at the same time. And there's one where I'm sitting where you're sitting and you're sitting where I'm sitting. That seems totally plausible based on these weirdos and they're trying to square relativity theory with quantum theory. Like it just at a certain point it sort of stops making sense and it becomes difficult. And then at that point, that's where your Deepak Chopras and stuff come in and bolt on older ideas onto this new science. And part of it is like the weird shit with like, people who believe in the Anunnaki, who are these like ancient aliens that came and impregnated monkeys with alien DNA so that the offspring humans would dig up gold. So that when the Anunnaki came back, they would have gold. So that's why you think about humans like shiny things. They're just like attracted to it, like it's programming. And then the show has that exact mythology in it. And then there's like a Cthulhu thing that happens in the very end of the series. So it does become weirdly supernatural, but like a neo-supernaturality, like sort of like ayahuasca supernaturalism.
Both of the things you just mentioned, the Anunnaki and the Cthulhu mythos, I feel like they overlap in the last 3 Alien movies.
Oh, totally. I mean, those are the same kind of ideas, that like, where are people from? That you are simply some sort of non-important thing that is the byproduct of some alien that you'll never quite understand's version of capital production. It's like, that's like one of the horrors of the whole deal. But near the end of Mystery Incorporated, they end up in a different universe where...
Oh, see, there were spoilers.
Yeah, whatever.
If you're going to sit through all 47 hours of Mystery Incorporated.
Look, they end up in a different universe. But one of the things that's interesting about the universe is there has not been the conspiracy to create supernaturalism in the new universe. So it's kind of almost like there has been no... I want to say that there's no religion almost. Like there's no dark stories. So every single person on the planet is like a weird utopia. But now the mystery team doesn't have anything to do. They're just these successful kids in this successful town in this ultra safe planet. And they quickly discover like, holy shit, we have ruined this town by eliminating the mystery. And then Harlan Ellison actually comes onto the scene near the end and then invites them to Miskatonic University for college, which is a little weird. And then they go off.
I'm okay with that.
So the 3rd season should be explicitly H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But
what I also love about the way that this show plays with skepticism is that, we talk about all these horror films. In the Scooby Doo universe, for the most part, fear is something to be conquered. Mm-hmm. Shaggy and Scooby are afraid of absolutely everything, and so they're sort of useless, and they are just this comedic counterpoint to the fact that whatever you're afraid of, it's not grounded in reality. You can overcome it. You can be stronger from it. And the way you can be stronger than it is not through violence, which is the solution in a lot of kids' shows that want action, but through thinking and through deduction. And what is also interesting compared to other horror texts is that most horror movies, there's a non-believer, and by the end of the film, they become believers, right? Honey, it's just your imagination, and that person is always wrong. They're never right. And in the Scooby-Doo universe, except for some disappointing exceptions, the kids are correct in disbelieving that the thing that goes bump in the night is nothing but someone trying to scare you, or it's nothing, right?
Yeah. They seem, though, to really be excited by the idea that it will be supernatural. Like they're always hoping. It's like there's this hope that it's going to be some weird shit.
Yeah.
I guess the thing about Scooby-Doo in horror movies is, like, it came out in 1969, predating Texas Chainsaw Massacre, predating any of the Kids in Vans, most of the Kids in Vans horror movies. Mm-hmm. And
that's true. The sort of rural horror of Chainsaw, Pumpkinhead, and yeah.
Yeah, so you wonder how much that informs. And then there's also the idea, like, people were so afraid by the late 60s of killer hippies, your Manson family and stuff like that. So that whole touring around in a bus sort of became cautionary. Well, it became more of a scary sort of thing to do. And now it's kind of back with the whole hashtag van life thing, like people going off and living in vans and getting their Instagram on.
I want to go back to what you were, when you compared it to like Law and Order, that there's a formula, because I think that there is also something like slasher films. I mean, part of the fun of plunging into especially 80s slasher films is that they're kind of all the same. They're very subtle variations on a very simple formula. And if you're into slasher films, it's not despite that, it's because of it. It's because of the variation. And this goes with all genre, thrash metal, Do you like it because of the diversity, or do you like it because you are into the minutia of difference between one thrash metal band and another? It's kind of both. And Scooby Doo episodes are the same way, as they generally follow this exact same, and Law and Order, It is a sign of fandom oftentimes when someone is able to create a really interesting formula within which a lot can happen without breaking that formula.
Yeah, I think I thought a lot about nostalgia and a lot about novelty when I'm watching this, because every single episode from episode 1 becomes nostalgic to the episode preceding it. They're all identical, and there's a certain pleasure in that. But there's also a pleasure in a certain level of an extended universe. It lets you really get into the, what we talked about in our Stranger Things episode, the first Stranger Things season is so referential to these other things, and there's a thread that goes through. One episode of Stranger Things is a movie, an hour and a half, probably would have been pretty fun. But as it goes on to the whole season, you get to know more about the characters, and you get to know more about things that have happened, and that history is sort of more interesting now for people, and it seems to go hand in hand with television series are often better than huge budget movies that are supposed to be award winners. I can't think of a single movie that's up for an Oscar this year that I liked better than some of the series I watched over the last couple of years.
But yeah, that nostalgia thing, I think, also plays into the issues that the Scooby Doo franchise runs into, especially when it hits those live action movies that have actually really good actors in them, and a lot of really talented people were obviously involved, but they're dreadful movies. And part of the problem is that they're taking something that is, by that point, very self-aware. The cartoons themselves are totally self-aware and understand their own tropes and play with their own tropes. But that technique of creating a text is really thin and pale at this point. And when we've got all these reboots of whether it's Dukes of Hazzard or Charlie's Angels or Scooby Doo, it's kind of all playing on the same joke that this is something you knew before, and it doesn't matter if you actually liked the original thing. In the same way that if you grew up, let's say, a metal kid and didn't listen to Depeche Mode, at this point, all music is the same, so you probably listen to Depeche Mode now anyway. It sort of doesn't matter. These genres and differentiations don't matter. Everything's so smeared, and I feel like that happens for pieces of nostalgia. Did you used to actually watch Charlie's Angels? Doesn't matter. They made a Charlie's Angels movie. I'm totally going to see that. It's sort of it's just another thing that happened once, and we're gonna do it again. And the primary thrust of why we're doing it again is just this sort of empty nostalgia factory. And Scooby Doo uses it as well, and it's a really tired joke. And I sort of feel like these inside jokes, this humorous self-referentiality that is happening more and more and more and more is in 5 years going to be as stale as... Have you ever watched Love American Style or Hee Haw? Just 70s comedies that are just patently unfunny because they're so of their time and without imagination that it's just not funny anymore.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of weird about it is the joke for all of them is that the characters are sort of out of their time and they're sort of fish out of water, and they have to come. It's almost like Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, but backwards. You have these past characters that are coming to terms with the cultural moment at the time. But as time passes, that that cultural moment becomes past and becomes corny too. Like, so
Right.
you look at the Brady Bunch movie, pretty smart when it came out. You know, it was making fun of the late 90s and the Brady Bunch movie. Now, if you watched it, I would imagine that you're contending with the original corniness of the show and that nostalgia, plus whatever was going on at the time. You like with all the music choices that are supposed to be like updates, like somebody dances to like a new song to show how in touch they are with it now. That becomes really stale and goofy.
Yeah.
And then, the movie, the live action Scooby Doo that had like, I think Sarah Michelle Gellar is in it and Freddie Prinze Jr. Yeah. It has like a lot of people in it. And what's funny is who turned it down. Tim Curry was supposed to be in it, but then he found out that Scrappy Doo was going to be in it, and he hates Scrappy Doo, so he was like, count me out of this movie.
Yeah.
Solid choice.
Fair enough.
But it was originally supposed to be a PG-13 movie, and they were supposed to play with the tropes a little bit harder. Like, there was going to be an on-screen relationship between Daphne and Thelma, and there was going to be...
Well, there was like more cleavage and more leg and more like... More sexual
drug,
humor. Yes.
More drug humor. But I almost feel like when you canonize a weird theory, it makes it less fun. Like, you don't get to play with that theory anymore. Right. It's like it's solidified, and it's not as interesting afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of theories, one thing that I kind of wish that the Scooby Snacks being drugs of some sort... Mm-hmm. That Shaggy and Scooby are not given Cabin in the Woods stoner hypersanity via like that seems like that could have opened up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, well, they never. I think you got to think it's practically reefer madness time at that time, so they're not going to like they're not going to indicate that like a different psychotropic outlook is going to give them sort of powers, which as it happens in Cabin in the Woods, the stoner character from Cabin in the Woods is basically Shaggy, except for he's able to see into the secret truth of the universe because of his drug use, which. I mean, I tell you what, I haven't seen any secret truths of the universe, and I've been going pretty hard for several years, and I sort of have come to this conclusion that you have to buy into a mythology of almost like a fundamentalist drug culture that those things are even out there to even begin to experience in them. Like one of the reasons why, even though I'd really like to try ayahuasca, I sort of don't have any need to have somebody pretend that there's jungle gods around too. You know what I mean? I just want to be in kind of a normal and maybe even a clinical environment, seeing what's going on. I don't need an alien belief system that I disbelieve as much as the one I grew up in. It just has no...
Are you too skeptical?
Not necessarily, but at the same time, are you robbing yourself of the full experience? Like, for instance, if you went into, I don't know, like a Nepalese restaurant, but it looked like a KFC. Like, is there something about stripping out the vibe with the experience? Probably. So ultimately, it probably would be pretty fun to have some little old wizard blow some cigarette smoke in your face and shake a rattle at you while you're having that experience. It's probably more fun. I don't know.
So if you were Old Man Jenkins, what strategy would you want to employ to pull one over on Mystery Incorporated?
Oh, I would go Gustav Frigg from Breaking Bad and just be completely non-supernatural. If I was actually trying to beat the gang, because I feel like they only care if there's a supernatural element for them to be attracted to it. And if
when they go to the ice cream parlor after the cops come and take over, they don't get suspicious of the guy scooping the ice cream.
No. If I was trying to beat them, I would definitely do run crystal meth through a chicken shack, like the dude in Breaking Bad. But if I was trying to sort of be caught, like they say serial killers do, I would probably try to do some sort of werewolf thing. I think would be pretty fun. Or maybe like a weird super soldier sort of thing, like a crazy snake oil protein powder that somebody took, turned them into some sort of monster, like a Toxic Avenger meets CrossFit type of character. I think it would be pretty funny.
That's good.
Yeah. What about you?
That's not far from the plot of iZombie, I feel like, at least the TV show.
I haven't watched
There's overlap. iZombie's great.
Well, my wife loves it, so it must be great. she's a huge Law and Order fan too. So
Amazing.
obviously again, like I guess I have seen 1 or 2 episodes of iZombie, but
I mean, it's basically a romantic comedy.
it's a procedural, you know, with the romantic element, which is kind of like, I knew you were going to bristle at the girls liking boys in the show.
Wait, what?
Like in Scooby Doo.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah. Industry Incorporated.
But,
yeah. No, it's not about them liking boys. It's that we took a cast of equals and gave the 2 women the exact same character. Reductive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, they still are. Okay, if you look at their just function to solving the mysteries, they're still basically solving the mysteries in the same exact way. They just have this added layer of both pining after these.
Both being boy crazy.
Yeah.
Not being interested in traps, not.
But I mean, when you're a teenager,
Not having deep
you're gonna be crazy.
I know.
You know, there's hormones going on, and then I mean, think about like who you were hooking up with when you were a high schooler. It was the immediate group of weirdos that you were hanging out with.
Sure.
You know, so I think it's pretty similar. And they're all, you know, honestly, they're all rich kids. That's the other thing that's going on, especially in Mystery Incorporated, is they're all from super rich, super successful families where, you know, the mom and the dad is like a half of their character. Like even like the physicality of the characters, it'll be like, oh, this woman has Daphne's hair and the husband has the chin from her. It's this kind of funny like character design. And you wonder like, where did these parents go wrong to create these mystery obsessed weird kids, especially since no one else seems to be like them.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of explaining away who they are seems like a bad idea, but I feel like Mystery Incorporated does it super well.
Yeah. And it's weird. Like they're not exactly rebellious to their parents. They just sort of can't help their interests, which I think is one of the things that's kind of funny and really sweet about the show. And then at the reveal at the end of this show, you see like each of the kids is successful based on their interests, but in a completely societally acceptable way. You know, like, so Scooby and Shaggy are like Michelin chefs. They're like teenage prodigies in the kitchen. In reality, like they just get super high and eat all kinds of weird shit like clam ice cream pizza.
Right.
But it's like there's something about the mystery or the obsession with, I mean, maybe even you call it like their obsession with the occult is what makes them subcultural. Which I think, you know, a dude like Eric Larson would probably have a lot to say about that, you know, like the occult influence on whatever makes them like that.
Yeah.
Is there any monster in the show that you thought was particularly good?
I always remember liking the witches. It's usually very generic, like a pirate, a ghost.
A pirate ghost.
Yeah. I remember loving this as a kid and then not seeing it for like 35 years or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then going back to it was kind of a treat and kind of a big disappointment. Again, like I love the background paintings. I think they're great. It sort of reminds me of like the aesthetic of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. Mm-hmm. But in Scooby Doo, Where Are You? They're all these sort of like mottled watercolors and things like that. And I think that is sort of metaphoric, or it's kind of metonymic of the show itself, where it's like it's this actually very scary looking background for Scooby Doo tripping on a mop and thwarting the evildoer's intentions, you know?
Yeah. Man, I'm running out of stuff on this one. It's going to be a short episode.
I have to apologize to our listeners maybe that I was so stoked to do this episode, and then the deeper I got into it, I was like, I don't know how much I have to say about this.
Yeah.
Like, other than to repeat my complaints about nostalgia and retro and rehashing and rebooting, which you can only go so far with, I think, at this point, and the skeptic angle, which is fun, but I already said it. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, like, I think part of it too is like the show is so uncomplex that it's like, you know, do you ever look at that Twitter handle, peer reviewed study?
No.
It definitely pokes fun at your like far left academic treatment.
Is it like a horse ebooks or something?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, go on.
Basically what they'll do is they'll find some sort of absolutely ridiculous peer reviewed study that is hilarious and basically just highlight sections of it and put it up there. And you could easily see like the wrong undergrad attempting what we're attempting, but in 40 pages. mobilizing all kinds of terrible writing to make just a weird point about abstractions that some thinker that they've half read has made, and you get really far away from what's happening in the show. A bunch of zany kids are solving some murder mysteries, or not even murder, but solving some mysteries, and it's fun, right? And that's enough. Like, it's more than enough, and when you think about what was the authorial intent or the directorial intent, it was probably to sell some breakfast cereal and some stuff. And
well, it was to make a scary cartoon that wasn't too scary.
Yeah.
Not hard.
And then there was that going on a little bit too, like just in general in other shows, like The Addams Family, for instance, was going on around the same time. And there's even an Addams Family Scooby Doo crossover, which is pretty good. Of the episodes, it's kind of fun because the way they've illustrated the Addams Family is fun. But, scary cartoons, it's a thing. I mean, who knows why? You have the Beetlejuice cartoon, which is testing to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some stuff I guess is just resistant. Well, I want to say resistant to critique or like, the corny cultural theory, but it's so explicit to what it is, the attempt to do that sort of like exegetical, like dig in, it just reveals the nonsense of the position of the person approaching it.
Does that mean my desire to do an episode about Scooby Doo was nonsense?
No, I think like
I'm willing to take that.
No, because when you said you wanted to do it, I was like, fuck, another cartoon, man. I already sat through Death Note. Like, I felt like I had done my work for the year. But then I thought, okay, so Scooby Doo, it is sort of this, exploration of archetypes, but it is also so boring at its base that it just doesn't really lend itself to it unless you wanted to do like a really full, crazy, like 2-hour episode about all the references in Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated. But then you're back to that thing where we were talking about in Stranger Things where it becomes like Easter egg hunting.
Yep.
And then Mystery Incorporated is full of great Easter eggs. I mean, like Harlan Ellison is in it. In one scene, there's the Griswold family from National Lampoon.
Yeah, they're in the first episode.
For like no reason.
Yep.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, they're just there. And then the big villain of the whole series, of the 2 series, is basically like this tentacled owl creature, which is straight Alex Jones territory. When you think about the what's that meeting where everybody goes to worship the owl god or whatever they say.
Oh, God damn it.
John
Ronson went to
the Bilderberg group.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so they go and like, so the story is that they all worship these ancient owl gods. And it's a kind of a sexy idea because, Odin is sort of an owl god and, it's wisdom and there's all this occult significance. But the reality is just an owl sanctuary, and the reason why there's all this weird owl stuff around is because it's like if you went to like an elephant sanctuary and there are elephants everywhere. There's just nothing to it other than that. And there's something similar to Scooby-Doo. There's like really nothing to it other than what it is.
Yeah. Although one thing that did draw me to the idea of doing Scooby-Doo as an episode is that it could potentially be an episode that we could do that anybody could listen to this episode. Like, I would be shocked if there's anyone who has access to podcasts who doesn't know what, if it weren't for those meddling kids, who doesn't know what that is and is a reference to. And that you probably don't even need to have seen an episode of any iteration of Scooby-Doo in 35 years, and you can probably listen to this episode and not be confused about what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, our show is known for accessibility, so I could understand your desire to have that show like that.
Well, I mean, especially I was thinking about our black metal episode that we did, which is still one of my favorites. But, at the beginning, I was really trying to assure our listeners, like, hey, we're going to try to explain everything as we go as best as possible. And then just the whole thing was just like abruptum this, ride for revenge that.
Well, I mean, the audience, the people who liked that episode, that's like their favorite episode ever. And then most people are just like, why don't you have a slasher movie drag queen thing again? You know? And
well, maybe we will.
Maybe we will. That seems to be what the audience demands.
All I want to do is make you people happy. So
it just made me realize that I bet a Scooby-Doo characters of John Waters crossover would be pretty great.
Oh, I wonder if that's happened.
Who knows? I mean, like, maybe.
Sounds perfect.
I mean, because that's one of the things that's kind of fun about animation, I think, is to even get into animation, you have to have a pretty highly developed skill set, right? And you've probably really concentrated on what's come before or probably into weird cultures, you're into art. You know, for instance, Walt Disney was really close friends with Salvador Dali, and you find that over and over again. And these art, you know, all these artists that make their way into animation, and you know, there's got to be all kinds of weird things snuck into animation, especially modern animation. And then I bet like probably the right person could go back through old episodes of Scooby Doo and find some really outrageous references to things in the background that are probably just snuck in. But I didn't see anything like that when I was looking around researching the episode.
Not so much. I mean, I think the thing with sneaking things in is you have to be pretty aggressive about it, especially because if you're working on animation, you're working on a deadline, and self-indulgences are going to interfere with your ability to hit a deadline.
Well, what about the dick on the Little Mermaid cover? The castle, like one of the sandcastle spires looks like a dick in the original poster.
I don't know how purposeful that was, but
well, it's not there anymore, so it was definitely. Or you know, in Disney World, there was supposed to be somebody drew some Nazis in one of the murals, and they were just up there for years and nobody noticed.
oh, for God's sake!
I mean, I don't know if that's real or not, but it's an old conspiracy theory.
Right.
I do like the idea of in Mystery Incorporated, where they live, all conspiracies are sort of considered valid, real, and live, because it reminds me a lot of Welcome to Night Vale. You know, they're like you could not easily, but you know, there definitely is a little bit of a vibe similarity between what goes on in Welcome to Night Vale and Scooby Doo, except for the difference is everything is true in Welcome to Night Vale and nothing normal happens. It's almost like the exact opposite.
Right. I mean, I think, again, this is where the issue of Scooby-Doo incorporating actual supernatural elements into it becomes a problem, because suddenly the universe is falling apart. It's, you know, I've talked before about something like True Blood, where you've got vampires, okay. Oh, wait, you've got werewolves, okay. You got fairies, all right. You have werepanthers. Okay, I'm
Here
fucking
comes
done.
a sexy tiger. You know,
At some point, enough's enough. Sometimes it works, like Penny Dreadful somehow makes it work. True Blood doesn't. But Scooby-Doo, it's like there's this consistent universe. Rational realism is where we are. And if suddenly there's zombies, well, what else is there? And then if we're in a universe where there are all of these things, are we in Welcome to Night Vale? Which is fine. But that is a very slippery, specific kind of universe to be in, right? Because if there are all these things, then the character's trying to debunk things. Where's the need to debunk things when the universe is rife with the old ones and zombies and werewolves, right?
Yeah, because then it becomes, you're just substituting a new theology at that point. You know, you're just like, okay, well, I mean, that's one of the things that's so weird to me about people who are into witchcraft, right? That they simultaneously reject the old mythology, but are also like kind of into the idea of like hexcraft and being like a sexy witch. It's like they want what's sexy about the supernatural element, but not the normie scorn that sort of like keeps it dark and in the closet. And like Scooby Doo, one of the things that's kind of cool about it is, yeah, like the fact that it is always not a monster for real. And then it becomes, how much trouble has this weirdo gone through to make this supernatural thing seem real, which is the story of all supernatural events. You know, like that's famously in Joe Rogan's show, Question Everything, is like he and his buddy Duncan Trussell, who's sort of like a psychonaut, they did the show, and they started the show because they're like, oh, we really want to see which conspiracies might actually be real. But after doing the show for like a season, they discovered that none of them are. Like they were like, they didn't run into a single person who was not full of shit, except for one lady when they were doing their Bigfoot episode who saw what they think is just a bear. They're like, yeah, we think she actually saw something, but what she describes is what hunters describe when they see bears from a distance. So even when you do see something, it's probably explained by some rational thing. And then anyone who's into supernatural stuff and is known is likely trying to monetize their bullshit. You know?
Like the town in Mystery Incorporated.
Yeah, totally. And even not even caring. Like, they don't even want to know what the solution is. They just want it to happen. And in that way, it's like, it's basically Oprah, you know? Like, she'll like have dudes that read into...
She'll have Deepak Chopra and Dr. Phil, just just the worst humans.
I mean, then she'll have like the dudes that are like mediums. You know, she's had those guys on before. Yeah. And I mean, to me, like, there's no more obviously full of shit supernatural practitioner than the medium. Like once you read one article about cold reading, you just watch what those guys are doing, and you're like, wow, how is anyone falling for this? And it gets to the point where it's sort of criminal, you know?
Yeah. This could slip so easily just straight into our episode about Ouija, Origin of Evil. But I think it'll be really exciting when she becomes our next president. Yeah,
well, maybe they will bring back the presidential astrologer that the Reagans had. Yeah. When did that go away? Like, I know it was at least up to Reagan that there was a presidential astrologer.
I don't know. Like, I don't understand your country one bit.
That is, please, you guys up there, like, about to go to war over, like, where the accent on an E goes. Jesus Christ.
I know.
The other thing is what kind of kids the Mystery Incorporated kids are. They're not boomers, right? Because they're into doing weird shit and they're into going around and they have this strange stuff. They're not like new millennial type kids either, because they're not exactly obsessed with, you know, themselves really so much. Like but they're also not altruistic. They're not. It's more about a game for them. Like, it doesn't seem.
It's definitely a game for them.
Yeah, it's like a thing that they do, and I think that's kind of what a lot of people are, you know, so sucked into these like kind of movements. They're looking for a thing to do that is sort of like a game. Like, so they get into like arguing about whatever their thing is.
Yeah.
And
no, they do seem to be bored kids. I mean, again, it's sort of like Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew. Like, you kids get off my land. And then it just cuts to, okay, you sneak around the back and go in the window and open the door. And then all, you know, in a real world, like, okay, you kids actually need to get off the guy's land.
Yeah.
Just go fucking do something else. Go drink beer behind the liquor store.
Yeah. The other thing that's funny about it is none of the plots are like epically huge plots. It's like, I dressed up like a witch and used a telescope to look at people as they opened up their safes. And then I used the scaffolding of this building to get over there. Like, so weird. I mean, you wonder if without the proper guidance, you could imagine the kids from the mystery van becoming like them. You know, they have the same sort of mind for it, especially like Fred, all of his weird trap building and stuff like that. I'm sure they could figure out how to become the enemy. That'd be kind of a fun like sequel.
That would be good. Wait, what big iconic villain is that? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of them, but like, well, the Marvel and DC universe are full of villains who were once on the side of good and turned, but being a crime fighter as training to do harm.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost you see the reverse of it with like dudes like Frank Abagnale and like the Catch Me If You Can guy. There's a movie about him, but he's basically a master forger, and he goes most of his life like he impersonates he becomes a doctor at one point. He becomes a lawyer, and he lives these like totally insane fake lives based on a true story. And at the very end, he ends up being like, basically he works for the FBI and teaches them how to spot forgeries and stuff like that.
I think Darth Vader is who I was thinking of, and I don't like bringing up Star Wars because they're terrible movies, but I think that's what I was thinking of.
Oh, that starts off good and goes evil?
I guess so.
Well, he gets pushed too. Like, that's the thing. There's like a thing that pushes the person over to become dark. I mean, that's the story of all those characters. Like Gollum starts off as basically a hobbit, and he gets the ring and lives in a basement for 100 years or whatever. If you were going to investigate a type of murder, or I don't know why I always call it murder, but a mystery, and you could pick 4 famous characters, who would you pick to be in your mystery squad?
Oh, who's my Scooby gang?
Yeah, who's your Scooby gang? And you have to pick one animal. There has to be one sort of anthropomorphic animal. In this example, you were Shaggy. just to take, you know what I mean? Like, because you're friends with the anthropomorphic animal.
Right. Slavoj Žižek.
You guys are getting nothing done.
He's Shaggy. I'm sorry.
Okay.
John Ronson.
Mm-hmm. Pretty solid. What about the animal? What would you have?
Does it have to be funny?
No, but it probably will be.
I just want a golden retriever.
Oh, just a regular.
I just want a dog.
Just a regular dog.
Yeah, just to keep us company.
Not a famous dog or a dog with abilities or anything like that.
No. I don't know. That's tough.
I don't know if it would count, but I would like to have the xenomorph from Alien as my animal.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Although maybe not. Maybe that doesn't count. The raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy would be pretty good.
He'd be fun to hang with.
Although he's a human, more of a human. He's not really a pet, so I don't think he feels because the character has to be half slow, I guess, because the famous dog.
Right. I have the worst one. 3 ninjas.
You would have the 3 ninjas?
No, just
all three of them?
3 ninjas.
You just have 3 random ninjas?
I would just be miserable.
Okay, so you have Slavoj Žižek, 3 ninjas, a golden retriever, and
John Ronson.
John Ronson. You aren't solving any crimes at all.
This is terrible. You know who would be great is, I always forget her name, but the woman who does the podcast Criminal, Phoebe Judge.
Oh, yeah, she'd be okay.
She'd be great.
I would go with Tim Kennedy.
Who's that?
He's a MMA fighter. He's a UFC top 10 contender. He has a show called Chasing Hitler or Finding Hitler. He's also an insane special forces sniper.
But the Scooby Gang solves crimes without violence. I mean, it always helps to have a thug on your side, but
right. But I mean, here's the thing: your traps aren't always going to work.
Yeah,
and then at that point, trouble.
At that point, 3 ninjas with throwing stars.
Well, see, you have characters who only do violence. Like at least Tim Kennedy is uncovering the mysteries of Hitler's possible escape to South America.
Amazing.
So I would definitely have that guy. Probably. Oh man, it is pretty tough to pick who your famous person Scooby. Did we say it was going to be characters or actual people?
I don't think you set it up either way.
Okay, then I definitely want Murtaugh and Riggs from Lethal Weapon.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So them, Tim Kennedy, the animal. I'm going to go with. Probably going to stay with the xenomorph from Alien because I think that counts. Yeah.
Great.
Maybe Ash from Evil Dead would be pretty good.
He's tough. He's kind of a Scooby Doo himself.
Yeah.
He causes as many problems as he solves.
I have absolutely no mental horsepower on my team, although Tim Kennedy's pretty smart, I guess.
I have the might.
You have the might of
would not accomplish anything.
No, I feel like I need maybe Elon Musk or somebody that could, an engineer, although I don't know how much actual engineering he does. Yeah. Well, anyway, it looks like we could do no better in constructing a Scooby Gang to solve mysteries.
Yeah. I guess the gang as it is just fine.
Yeah. Although I had my own nostalgia idea for a show, which is to update Monster Squad, which I wonder if we should do Monster Squad as an episode.
I would be down with that. You know what? Just before you go down that lane, it just occurred to me that what would be interesting is, so we're trying to come up with these better Scooby Gangs, but the fact is, Scooby Gang as it is seems to work pretty fucking well.
Yeah,
there's something about that combination, and it just sort of reminds me of the math that went through picking baseball teams that
Moneyball.
Yeah, that it's not about who hits the most home runs. It's actually about who makes a better team.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
There's got to be metrics applied to creating the perfect Scooby Gang.
Yeah. So it's probably not.
I'm sure my
ninjas
are out. Yeah.
Yeah, those ninjas are worthless. I mean, probably Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone would be pretty good,
right?
Probably an excellent choice because you got to have a trap builder of some sort.
Bill Murray from Groundhog Day. He's very tenacious.
Yeah, and by the end of
he
it,
has the power to
unlimited talents.
Yes.
Or even Venkman from Ghostbusters would be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were bringing up something about
Oh, Monster Squad.
Yeah.
We were talking about Monster Squad. Monster Squad is one of those movies that you could easily update just by updating the creatures, right? So, because in Monster Squad, it takes place in the 80s, but there's 50s monsters. Now you could have it take place now, but have 80s monsters. So imagine with Freddy, Jason, Chucky, Pinhead, whoever, as the creatures that come to get the kids. I think that movie would do really well financially.
Yeah, although that sounds like it's in danger of being Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, totally. Well, I, for one, have nothing else to say about Scooby Doo.
I think I'm done.
Yeah, although I could talk about Predator for hours.
Well, then let's stop as soon as possible.
All right.
Let's fade to black and roll the credits. Subscribe to this podcast, rate and or review it on iTunes and Stitcher. Join our mailing list.
Yep, make sure you watch Ouija.
So there are a lot of Ouija movies out there. We're talking about the one from 2016, Ouija, Origin of Evil, which was bizarrely successful.
You want the freshest Ouija movie possible.
I'm sure there have been like many since then that are even less remarkable. And I'm going to rewatch Witchboard. I'm actually more excited to rewatch Witchboard. Have you seen that?
Yeah, like years ago.
Yeah. I'm sure it's fantastic.
Yeah, who knows? Some of those movies they're surprisingly fun though. There's something about them, and often it has to do with a better than it has any right to be acting job.
True.
Like somebody is just really great or compelling or just screams great or is hilarious and zany.
Or just so singular and weird, like the mom in Sleepaway Camp is just untouchable.
Or Reggie from Phantasm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phantasm did not deserve Reggie.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, party on.
What the fuck? What was he?